you know what happens to a billionaire duke when he hires an inexperienced caretaker? Let's find out. We are in Paris, and it's the middle of the night. Driss is out for a drive with his employer and friend, Philippe. The two are stopped by the police because of high speed. Driss is about to be arrested, but explains that his friend is feeling sick and they are rushing to the hospital. At that point, Philippe pretends to have a stroke. Being concerned, the police officers escort the two men to the hospital. After the officers have gone, Driss and Philippe drive away in the car while smoking a cigarette. Actually, the real story begins months ago. Felipe Pozo di Borgo is a wealthy man who lives in a large mansion. He is currently looking for a caretaker, but most of the applicants are boring and act awkward. Among the applicants with many references, there is a rough guy named Driss Basari. Driss is not there to try to get hired, but only to get Felipe's signature in order to receive unemployment benefits for himself and his large family. The two immediately begin a conversation about music. Driss is an extroverted guy, and Felipe is an introvert, so they complete each other. In conclusion, Felipe proposes to Driss to come tomorrow morning to get the document. Driss lives together with his brothers, sisters, and his mother. There are so many of them in the apartment that he cannot even take a bath peacefully. While the older sister takes care of the younger ones, Driss notices his brother Adama outside. He is worried because Adama doesn't eat at home, but drives around in a car with some strange guys. In the evening, while Driss was smoking in the kitchen, his mother, Fatou, entered the house. She had arrived tired from work, and seeing Driss in the house doing nothing irritated her even more. Fatou learned that Driss had been in prison for 6 months and kicked him out of the house. Fatou was disappointed and couldn't hide her tears. Once outside, Driss smoked along with some friends from the neighborhood. The following day, Driss returns to Felipe's house. Yvonne, Felipe's assistant, shows him the house and the task he will have to perform. She acts as if Driss has already been hired. As it turns out, Driss had 2 choices. He can decide whether to receive unemployment benefits or work for Felipe, which means live in luxury for a trial period. Felipe bets that Driss won't last even 2 weeks with him. Since he has nowhere to sleep, Driss agrees to work for him. In the early days, Driss does not seem to accept all his duties. At first, Driss washes Felipe's hair with foot gel and his feet with shampoo. Moreover, he often forgets the basics, such as having to hold the phone close to his ear. One evening, while Driss was eating, he met for the first time Felipe's daughter Elisa and her boyfriend Bastien. The 2 teenagers were looking for the beer that Driss had already drunk. In the days that followed, Driss began to get used to the routine and sometimes experimented with Felipe's superpowers. For example, one day, while Felipe was lying on the bed, Driss poured hot tea on his legs, but Felipe did not feel anything. After a while, Driss began to help Felipe with the letters, distributing them into different files. He also created a new file for massage services, calling it the horse file. Despite working only for Felipe, Driss could not give him his full attention, because there was Magali, who was his Aphrodite. He couldn't take his eyes off her even just for a second. However, in later times, a friendly relationship begins to grow between Felipe and Driss. Driss manages to entertain Felipe by making him forget about his physical problems. Driss is not the kind of guy who follows the rules. In fact, instead of driving the van, he sits with Felipe in the Maserati. The sound of the engine enchants Driss and Felipe's ears. They wanted to go out for a drive, but there was Felipe's neighbor who was always parking in front of the exit. Driss, being impulsive, got out of the car to teach him a lesson. He grabbed him by the jacket to show him the no parking sign. Then, Felipe and Driss go to the museum to buy a painting. Felipe firmly believes that only through art, one can leave a mark on the earth. In fact, he paid 41,000 euros for this piece of art. You see, even if Felipe gets along great with Driss, Billionaire's friends are concerned, believing that the guy is dangerous because of his criminal record. Felipe, on the other hand, states that he doesn't worry at all about Driss's past, since he is the only one who treats him as a normal fellow and not as a disabled person. Driss, meanwhile, tries to woo Magali. He invites her to go take a bath together. Magali jokingly accepts and then leaves laughing. Driss learns from Yvonne that Felipe is writing letters to a very special woman named Eleanor, a woman Felipe has never spoken to. He has never seen her, but he fell in love just by reading her letters. One night, Driss was trying to sleep, but suddenly heard Felipe breathing anxiously. He got out of bed to check on him and laid a wet washcloth on his face. For a moment, Felipe relaxed, but after a while, he started breathing anxiously again. After that, Driss covered him with some warm covers and took him for a walk in the fresh air. Driss learns that this is part of Felipe's illness and cannot be cured. Then, Driss asks Felipe if he is able to make love. Felipe, being paralyzed, can only feel pleasure through his ears, since they are an erogenous zone. As they were chatting, Philippe suddenly felt bad again. The only solution that comes to Driss's mind is to give Philippe a joint. Philippe smokes 2 puffs and asks for more. But Driss said that 2 hits are enough for the first time. The two become increasingly close. Philippe reveals to Driss that he became a paralyzed quadriplegic after an accident while paragliding during bad weather. His wife, a beautiful woman with whom he was in love, had died of cancer. Philippe reveals to him that his wife had 5 miscarriages, so the two adopted a daughter named Eliza. In conclusion, Philippe asked Driss to return the Fabergé egg he had taken. He had 25 of them, as he had been together with his wife for 25 years. The next day, Driss picks Mina from school to ask her about the egg. Mina is upset because Driss didn't answer her messages. She didn't care about the egg. After that, Driss learns that his younger brother, Adama, has been detained by the police for having marijuana. Driss wanted to have lunch with Adama, but the latter refused, wanting to hang out with his friends. That same day, Magali helped Philippe write another letter for Eleanor. At this point, Driss could not resist and called Eleanor to have her talk to Philippe. At first, Philippe was very skeptical, but afterward, he couldn't stop talking to her on the phone. Philippe takes Driss to an opera house. While the others watched intently, Driss couldn't stop laughing at this performance. After a call with Eleanor, the woman was interested in seeing Philippe. Philippe, on the other hand, was worried that Eleanor won't like him anymore when she will find out that he is paralyzed. Philippe instructs Driss to learn to appreciate the abstract painting, so Driss decides to try his hand at painting, only to sell his masterpiece. While he is painting, Philippe's daughter comes into his room to ridicule him. In the process, Philippe decides to send Eleanor a different picture, a photo before the tragic event. Philippe did not want Driss to know that he switched the photo, and the moment Driss entered his office, Yvonne hid one of the photos in the whores file. Then, Driss told Philippe to look after his daughter and scold her. Yvonne agrees with Driss, and Philippe promised to deal with his teenage daughter. After a few days, Driss finished his abstract painting and showed it to everyone in the house. Philippe is impressed that Driss had made the effort to paint such a work, and agreed to help him sell it. Every morning, while Driss was running, Philippe followed him in his electric wheelchair. Being too slow, Driss decided to modify it to increase the speed. Philippe's birthday arrives, and every year all the relatives are there, saying they want to check on his health. Driss shows up in an elegant costume, which attracts Magali's attention. A few moments later, as Driss returns from the bathroom, he hears Philippe's daughter crying in her room. She experiences all the problems of her age, such as mood swings, rebellion against her father, and love problems. Eliza told Driss that her ex-boyfriend, Bastien, insulted her, so she asked Driss to go talk to him, and he agrees to help her. Philippe urges Driss to listen to live classical music. However, he finds it boring because it's not danceable. Later, Driss makes him listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire. After that, everyone started dancing along with Driss. As a gift, Driss gave Philippe Eleanor's letter, in which was a picture of her. In the letter, Eleanor said that soon she would be arriving in Paris, hinting that Philippe should call her for a date. The next days, Yvonne and Driss prepare Philippe for his date. Yvonne will accompany him, while Driss will go talk to Eliza's ex-boyfriend. Driss told Bastien to go and apologize to Eliza, and to bring her a croissant every morning. Meanwhile, Philippe was waiting for Eleanor in a restaurant. Several hours passed, but the mysterious woman did not show up. Philippe, disappointed, calls Driss to come to pick him up. But surprisingly, at the same moment that Philippe left the restaurant, Eleanor entered without noticing him. That same evening, Philippe decides to take a flight in a private jet with Driss. During the flight, Philippe reveals that he managed to sell Driss's painting for 11,000 euros. In conclusion, he gave Driss the money, suggesting ironically that he should continue painting. The next day, Philippe told Driss to go paragliding. Driss considered him a madman, but was eventually forced to join Philippe. The night they return home, Driss's brother Adama has been waiting for him. Adama is slightly injured and is in trouble due to criminal gang issues. His sister, Mina, is worried, and Driss is telling her on the phone that he will work it out. Driss finally tells his story to Philippe. Driss was adopted by his aunt and uncle in Senegal. His uncle died, but his aunt, after being with several men, had many children and had to take care of the family. Philippe realizes that it is time to separate from Driss and let him go home. The next morning, as Driss prepares to leave, he learns that Magali is actually having an affair with a girl. That's why she didn't give him a chance. On the way out, a man had parked in the wrong place. and instead of throwing him out of the car, Driss politely asked him to move. When he was about to throw the horse file in the trash, he found a picture of Philippe and kept it. In the evening, Driss, along with the dama, waited for their mother to arrive and accompany her home. In the meantime, new caregivers were hired at Philippe's house, perhaps better prepared than Driss, but rigid and sometimes incompetent. Philippe is unable to establish with any of them the same relationship he had with Driss. He falls into apathy, grows a beard, and doesn't talk to anyone. In the meantime, Driss uses his experience to look for a new job in a transport company. At first, the interview doesn't go smoothly, but then the girl is touched when Driss starts talking about the painting on the wall. Philippe's relationship with the new caregiver is getting worse, plus he is feeling bad. Yvonne is very worried, so she calls Driss. Once he arrives, Driss decides to take him for a drive. The plot returns to the opening scenes of the movie. After avoiding the police, Driss decides to take Philippe to the beach. As they admire the waves of the sea, Philippe is about to tear up. It is an emotional moment for both of them. Afterward, Driss trims Philippe's beard, amusing and teasing him with different types of mustaches. After dressing him up, he takes him to a restaurant. Philippe is convinced to have lunch with Driss. In the last moment, after giving him back his precious egg, Driss wishes him good luck and leaves. A few seconds later, Eleanor shows up. Philippe is moved to tears. Philippe smiles at Driss through the window. Driss smiles back and then walks away. At the moment, Philippe and Driss are still friends. Philippe lives in Morocco, is newly married, and has 2 daughters. Driss, on the other hand, started a business, got married, and has 3 children. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then find out how wealthy people kidnap humans and then hunt and kill them as a sport.